Hi everyone, here we are, almost live from WERK1, the most startup-friendly place in Munich, as we phrase our ambition to serve the ecosystem. Okay, we actually pre-recorded this little birthday celebration because by the time you are seeing this, we are all probably already drowning in happiness or maybe champagne about today's occasion. WERK1 is turning 8. Happy birthday, WERK1, we love you. So why should you watch? Q Club, Titty Twister or Natrasch-Tempel, who remembers? Back then, WERK1 started in the middle of Munich's club district in what is now Werksviertel Mitte. We take you on a journey through time to the last 8 years of the startup landscape in Munich and Bavaria and discuss the future of Munich's startup landscape with our very special guest, BRITTA WEDDELING. So if you want to know if Silicon Valley tops Gründerland Bayern or vice versa, what Barack Obama is like behind the scenes, or what awaits deep tech startups in the coming years, stay tuned. Back then in 2013, WERK1 was part of Kunstpark Ost or Kultfabrik. The story goes that this is where many Munich guys met their later wives, and others have lost theirs here. So today, WERK1 has a different neighborhood, but the creative soul and strong belief in the power of diversity remains. WERK1 was established in 2013. 2014 saw the opening of our co-working space, and in 2015, the legendary WERK1 Café was opened. In 2016, for the first time, we ran our W1 Forward InsurTech Accelerator, which is still going strong today, and even stronger than back then. In 2017, we started our repositioning of WERK1 from a pure place for co-working and startup offices to the powerhouse that we are today. And over the years, we added services and startup-friendly things until we are today in the year 2021. And for the ones who have visited us recently, you can see that outside the construction work for WERK1.4 is already going on, where we are going to build a new building for more startup space, for scale-up offices, but also for Munich's most startup-friendly co-living experience. And we are very much looking forward to that. And this whole powerhouse strategy really pays off. 13 million is a number we are really proud of, and that's the total funding that WERK1 resident startups have raised in the last very difficult year, 2020. So congratulations to you guys. You're doing an awesome job. And also Munich as a startup ecosystem as a whole is developing very nicely. If you look at the year 2013, there was around 800 startups in Munich, and that number has risen to more than 2,500 today, startups and scale-ups in the Munich startup ecosystem. And another KPI that we find very relevant and super important for the startup ecosystem is the number of female founders in startups. And female entrepreneurship for us here at WERK1 is a big topic, and not only because we know that diverse teams perform better, but especially, in all honesty, because we see that at WERK1 we are still below 10% of the startups that have female founders on board. And we definitely want to change that, and that's part of our growing initiative, One Mission. But it's not all great. So in 2020, we saw a steep drop in beer consumption from 7.7 million mass that have been sold at Oktoberfest 2013 to 0 in 2020. But we won't let that bring us down, and thanks to all our friends and family for your kind birthday wishes. And again, happy birthday, WERK1.
Happy birthday!
Liebes WERK1,
One Mission wünscht dir
zum 8. Geburtstag
alles Gute!
Woo!
Hi zusammen, ich bin Jadun von Dexbrocket und wir wünschen dem WERK1 alles Gute zum 8. Geburtstag. Wir freuen uns auf die Zusammenarbeit in der Zukunft und auf ganz viele weitere Geburtstage.
Hallo liebes WERK1, ich bin die Alex von Precise und ich wünsche euch alles Gute zum Geburtstag. Ich hoffe auch, dass wir demnächst alle wieder zusammen feiern werden und uns im WERK1 sehen. Liebe Grüße, eure Alex.
Hi, ich bin Paul von den Camper Boys und wir wünschen dem Werk 1 eine mega fette Geburtstagsparty, sobald es wieder möglich ist.
Liebes Werk 1, auch von Seiten des Gründerland Bayern-Teams aus dem Bayerischen Wirtschaftsministerium wünschen wir euch alles Liebe und Gute zum 8. Geburtstag und freuen uns auf eine weitere spannende Zusammenarbeit mit euch. Alles Gute!
Mein liebes Werk 1 Team. Oh, ja. Mittlerweile Marie vom Freeway Camper Team wünschen wir alle zusammen dem kompletten Werk 1 Team einen wunderschönen Geburtstag. Etwas besonders in den Corona-Zeiten. Trotzdem hoffen wir, dass wir und auch alle anderen Startups mit euch nach Corona zusammen feiern können. Vielleicht sogar in einer Sommerfeier. Alles Liebe und Gute.
Liebes Werk 1, der Intratech Hub wünscht euch zum 8. Geburtstag alles Gute.
Hi, I am Federico from Custom Surgical and I am here in Werk 1 wishing you all the best for your birthday. So happy birthday, Werk 1.
So welcome back. But before engaging in any deeper analysis on the potential side effects of too little beer consumption, I would actually like to turn to you, Britta, and take a look on the changes of the startup ecosystem back now and then. Great to have you here. Welcome, Britta.
Thanks for having me. It's a great pleasure to be here at the center of the Munich startup ecosystem. Thanks for the invitation, Florian.
Before we start our little chat, Britta, I'd like to take the chance to read out actually your official short intro CV, so we actually know what you currently do and get a little bit an idea of your background. So currently as VP, Head of Communications and External Affairs, Britta Weddeling leads communications and public relations at Marvel Fusion, a technology pioneer in the field of clean energy generation. And as far as I know, you do some real rocket science with Marvel Fusion, and I'm super excited to hear a little bit more about that later on. Previously, the trained journalist steered the content and program strategy of the European startup conference Bits&Pretzls as editor-in-chief. We all know Bits&Pretzls very well. And from 2014 to 19, you reported as Silicon Valley correspondent for the Handelsblatt from the epicenter of technology and innovation on the US West Coast on the important trends in the network economy. And I don't know if you're aware, Britta, but actually there was a time when we were both working for the same company. It was Hubert Burda Media.
Right, back in the days.
Yeah, back in the days. And I think you were working as correspondent for Focus magazine, right?
Yeah, there was actually, I think that was in 2013 or 14, right?
Yeah, so just around the time when Werk 1 was actually founded.
Oh, that's such a coincidence.
What a coincidence.
Yeah, it's really, it's kind of a long time ago. At the same time, I remember 2014 was the first time I ever visited Silicon Valley for my first story back in the days for Focus magazine. So my first experience started there. Yeah.
And I actually remember 2014 was also the DLD in Munich, and I just reread your piece on Jan Koum, the founder of WhatsApp, and it was just before the Facebook acquisition.
Right.
And yeah, so great times.
I did this together with a great colleague, Holger Schmidt, who was a reporter at Focus magazine back in the days. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's great. But I'd suggest, Britta, before we dive into some of your views on the startup ecosystem and get a little discussion going on there, we actually prepared a little set of questions, a little set of cards. And these are either or questions, so very short questions. Every one of us, you have some questions for me and I have some for you. We're just allowed to answer with one word and then, well, gives a little bit of explanation, but let's do this rather quick and get to know each other a little bit better.
We thought it was just like a fun idea, you know, to kick off the conversation with. So the first question for you, Florian, is follow or lead?
Lead. Well, I think if you do something innovative in a startup or wherever, you need to be a leader in any role. So lead. Britta, bottom up or top down?
Wow, interesting. You know, I think specifically in the area where I'm working in right now, which is like a deep tech, very much scientific driven company, it's important to have a vision which kind of leads the company, leads the team, and creates this eyes on the ball atmosphere. So I would probably choose in this case lead
top down?
Top down.
Top down or bottom up?
Top down, but you know, bottom up could also be an interesting option. But I think it depends on the business model actually.
Okay. Cool.
Oh, the next one is for me, right?
Yeah,
oh, God.
next one for me.
A tradition or transition?
Oh, interesting one, especially here in Munich. So tradition or transition. So this time I'd go for tradition because I think this is what makes Munich unique. And I also strongly believe in the idea of having a strong basis and strong background where you're coming from, and based on that, innovate and do something new. So in this case, I'd go for the tradition one.
Are you from Munich?
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I've not always lived here, but yes, I was born and bred in Munich.
Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So next one, marathon or sprint?
I'm a big marathoner, so like a big runner. I never did a marathon, but I was just talking with my colleagues at Marvel yesterday. We created a small running group, and we sometimes work out in the morning. That we wanted to do a half marathon together at some point. Yeah, so I would probably choose marathon at this point.
Okay,
yeah.
Wow, big respect.
You know, it's just I don't know. It's a goal, right? You know, we see when we get up there. So saving or investing?
Not only in times like these, I definitely go for investing. I think if you want to break new grounds and do something new, you need to invest the resources that you have. And that's not only money in order to build something new. So invest.
Right.
Oh, that's an interesting one, Britta, especially considering the company you're working for at the moment. So deep tech or haute cuisine?
You know what? I would love to go to a restaurant or a bar to have a drink or a meal with friends, but obviously in our case, it's deep tech. I see a lot of very good, innovative things happening here, specifically in Munich in the deep tech space. And I think the deep tech, you know, where entrepreneurship and science actually merge, is a place where you get the next wave of important innovation. So I would probably choose deep tech for now.
Okay.
At least until the lockdown is over.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Call or text?
Text. I honestly don't like calling too much, and I actually, sorry to say, but hate it if I receive WhatsApp voice messages. So definitely text.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So my next question is almost the last. Investing or bootstrapping?
I feel that there's a lot of interesting stuff happening in the bootstrapping sector, and I think that's a great tool for entrepreneurs to have the fortune of their company in their own hand. In the area where I'm in right now, which is this, you know, very detailed, scientific-driven ecosystem, I would probably choose investment for now.
Okay.
Haarfall or sneakers?
Well, kind of difficult one now because I chose tradition early on, but still in this case, I'll go for the sneakers because I think exactly if you combine the tradition, the lederhosen with sneakers, that's exactly my spirit. So sneakers.
Cool.
And my last one for you, Britta, Silicon Valley or Gründerland Bayern?
You know what? That's a very difficult one, I have to say, because it's really hard to compare both of these ecosystems, right? I mean, I spent 5 years living in Silicon Valley, and I think the Silicon mindset, this growth mindset, that's really important. It is something that we should probably have more in Germany, this idea that you can really create groundbreaking new things with your technology. But you know, when I was still living in the US, I saw a lot of great innovation happening in Europe, and specifically in Munich, where you know, entrepreneurs are close to the big companies, BMW, for example, and many others. So I think, you know, we should have more Silicon Valley in Bavaria. But I think, you know, interesting things are happening right now in the Gründerland Bayern or Gründerland Bavaria. So, you know, and so I probably choose that.
And you decided to come back, so you kind of made the
I
decision
know,
for Gründerland Bayern, and that's great. And that was, thanks for that. That was fun and very interesting and insightful.
Yeah.
So maybe let's stick with that topic for a moment about Gründerland Bayern and also on your different perspectives. Let's first look at back now, 2013. We heard the year when WERK1 was founded. Today, 2021. So from your perspective, what has changed the most here in Bavaria and Munich in the startup ecosystem?
Yeah, I got older. That changed. Everybody got older. You know, many things changed, right? I spent a lot of time in San Francisco and in the area covering all these technology ideas and you know, talking to entrepreneurs and, you know, talking about their business models. But I think, you know, there's an opportunity in the European startup ecosystem that's outstanding right now, because you see many investors, specifically from the US, moving over to start and open offices here, because they are actually looking for these deep tech business models, these deep tech entrepreneurs. And that for sure changed. The amount of money that's actually, you know, given to startups in Europe rose. Specifically, deep tech is on the rise in Europe and also in Munich. And I think that's a great opportunity for entrepreneurs.
So do you see more change in terms of the technology that's happening here and the innovation, or is it more on the capital side that international investors are more and more aware of the things that are happening here?
Yeah, I think it's both. I think you see a new kind of self-identification of entrepreneurs. I think we went through a phase where Berlin was at the top of everybody's mind when they thought about entrepreneurship, and these were business models based on e-commerce, around media, and right now you see this next wave of really deeply engineering-driven companies, and a mindset, honestly, of entrepreneurs who I would compare more to those entrepreneurs who I saw and met in Silicon Valley. This engineering-driven mindset, the idea to really build groundbreaking companies, really working for years on a hard science question, which is like a totally different mindset to, you know, compared to, you know, just looking for the next big exit, which I think was like one of the goals specifically in the rocket internet age that kind of shaped the first wave of entrepreneurship in Germany. How did you experience? I mean, this change. You're an entrepreneur yourself. You're obviously here at WERK1, this startup place in the middle of everything. When I walked from the train to what's this place, I saw many entrepreneurs sitting in their offices, working on stuff. So you're actually in the middle of everything. How do you experience that change?
Yeah, we were talking about earlier times, 2013. Back then, I was still working for Burda Digital, scouting startups and looking for M&A opportunities for Burda. And what I noted is that we hardly looked at companies in the Munich area. So that kind of was a sign that, yes, there was a little bit of a startup ecosystem back then. There were companies like Windeln.de or Westwing at the time, or Freeletics and so on.
Right.
But it was not many.
Okay.
And if I compare that to today, and yes, you're describing it not only here at WERK1, but also in Munich, it's just the sheer number of startups that has risen dramatically. I think today we have more than 2,500 startups here. So that's definitely one thing. I'm seeing just more startups and more activity here.
Interesting. Yeah.
And well, of course, if we look at, I mean, you were talking a lot about deep tech, and yes, I see that too. At the same time, I see a lot of really strong enterprise software startups here that are sometimes deep tech too, but sometimes not as
Yeah,
deep
you
tech,
know what? I think it's like this special mix of having this entrepreneurial mindset, young entrepreneurs, young startups, you know, in the same area with big industries, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Audi is not too far away, and I think this, specifically in the enterprise space, it's interesting for entrepreneurs, obviously, to test their products with big customers in the enterprise space, right? So I think this specific ecosystem of having startups, entrepreneurs, science-driven entrepreneurs who come from, I don't know, Technische Universität München, the LMU, or other places. I think also Switzerland, Zurich is an amazing place. Combined with these big enterprise customers, that's like a huge opportunity.
Absolutely. And I also see a lot of change when it comes to the openness of corporates and Mittelstand companies when it comes to working with startups. I mean, still a couple of years ago, it was like, yes, okay, maybe it sounds interesting, but they didn't really engage in any corporations or actually turned into customers.
Right.
And that has changed. So besides the sheer number of startups, it's also the openness to co-innovate and work together. And that's great development. And as you said, I think this is also a very specific USP for the Munich startup ecosystem. I mean, where else in Germany and even Europe do you have such a concentration of companies, wealth, combined with innovative power of startups?
I was actually curious about your experience here during the pandemic. I just remember in, our company, we obviously had like several people coming over from the US, researchers on the laser side specifically, who came from Berkeley, Austin, and other places. And it was very tough to get them to Germany because obviously there were no planes and there were all these restrictions. I was actually wondering, how this affected your place here, because I see like many people still working in the office. So how was the situation like to run actually a startup place, a startup ecosystem during this pandemic?
Yeah, I'll be very open with you. Like pretty much exactly 1 year ago, I was like, oh man, we are doomed. So what's going to happen not only to the startup ecosystem in general, but also to this place, to WERK1, because our whole model is pretty much built around the idea of bringing people together around networking and so on. And now what we discovered 1 year later is actually that we have in 2020, looking at the relevant KPIs, we actually had one of the best years ever. So that means we still have about 10, 12 startups every month who apply here to become part of our incubator. We have the best funding rounds we've ever had in our incubator. So this is all great. And my feeling is that actually after this initial shock, the startups actually kind of reflected and said, hey, this is actually great. We are still very early stage. We need to be building our products and we need to be focusing anyway on our early developments. And now is a great time to do that, to be ready then when the customers are more open again and then to really start off. And so all in all, pretty positive actually.
I think also when you look at, the debate around Corona, COVID, vaccines, there's a specific focus on scientific improvement, right? And you see, with, coming up with a vaccine, investing, I mean, the government invested actually in a startup that was developing a vaccine. Yeah. You see like a focus on these, next steps for innovation and, the question, what's really necessary? Where do we want to focus as a society when it comes to innovation? What's really important? And I think that helps to shape the focus for entrepreneurs as well. And also, all the debate around masks and, having access to these innovations. I think it also was a question of, do you have access to this innovation or not? And I think this is something that's on, specifically from my experience at Bits&Pretzls, when I talk to many entrepreneurs in Europe, having access to innovation and actually, make entrepreneurs stay in Europe. That's like something that's on a lot of discussions right now.
Yeah, maybe just on your first point, what I see is also a very healthy effect of the startups that have solutions that mankind really needs. From my perspective, have the best time ever. Yeah. They get funding, they get customers and everything. But the ones who are kind of nice to have solutions, or call them vitamins, they have a really hard time, not only during the pandemic, but I would say also in the future. So in a way, this is also very healthy, somehow harsh development, but also healthy development. And I see that. And I can say that also for the startups here at WERK1. And the second thing you were already touching on Bits and Pretzels. So this perspective would be super interesting too. Maybe you can talk a little bit about how did it come that you decided to come back from Silicon Valley to Munich and work for Bits and Pretzels? How was that?
Right. I was actually having breakfast with Felix Haas, one of the co-founders and the chairman of Bits and Pretzels, a great guy, great entrepreneur, great investor. And we were talking about the European startup ecosystem.
Where was the breakfast? Was it?
It was actually in San Francisco.
Oh, in San Francisco.
It was in San Francisco in a breakfast place very close to the place where I was living in Noe Valley. For those who know San Francisco, it's a very nice area around Twin Peaks Tower. I was actually, I was working at the time. I was working in Silicon Valley for 5 years, and I was like, okay, what could be my next step? And I didn't really have to figure out what I wanted to do next. But when I talked to Felix and he told me so many things about Bits and Pretzels and the vision they had, we actually started discussing how we can create something for European entrepreneurs that could help them, could be an inspiration. And then we came up with building our own media outlet at Bits and Pretzels, including a podcast, including reporting. And this is where we decided, we wanted to work together. And, the moment where I decided to go back to Germany, but also combined with this idea of what I saw in Silicon Valley about the rise of the European startup ecosystem. And, the many interesting entrepreneurs, many interesting ideas where I saw, this is where the next wave of innovation is coming from. It's coming from Europe and coming from European entrepreneurs.
And speaking about inspiration, building a platform for inspiration, you said that sounds great. And I think there couldn't be much more inspiration than bringing Barack Obama to the stage of a startup conference. And quite honestly, there were moments when I asked myself, and when I was also asked by founders, okay, that's a startup conference from founders for founders. Why do you need Barack Obama on stage? But maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
What I always loved about the Bits and Pretzels team, and specifically Felix, Bernd, and Andy, the co-founders, was their ambition and their vision, because there was nothing they wouldn't try and nothing they would, try to achieve. And I had no part at all in, getting Barack Obama to Bits and Pretzels, so it was all their work. But I liked this ambition and this, really trying to create something inspirational for the Munich and European startup ecosystem. And obviously, the main goal was to get Barack Obama, this visionary, this, ideal of leadership, this person that, is still standing so much for change and, personal achievement, humanity, values, specifically, at the time during the Trump legislation, it was, very, very outstanding to actually, had the honor to interview him on stage.
So I can only agree. So for me, that was like a twofold inspiration. So the first one was the project itself, to have that bold idea to get an ex-president on stage and just follow that through. That was a great inspiration itself. And then having him as a person on stage and having him interviewed by you. And I mean, we all saw it. It was like, I think, 9,000 people packed at Messe München.
Yeah, it was a lot of people.
I mean, you're a trained journalist and absolute professional, but I can still imagine that was probably quite exciting for you.
The whole the whole process we went through as a company was just outstanding. We had the Secret Service visiting us in our office, which was obviously this was before Corona, obviously packed with people. We had a very small office, and we had like 20-30 people working there, like working students and freelancers, and we were all sitting there, and there was all this stuff for the conference, and I remember these Secret Service people visiting us and really pretty serious in, their suits, black suits, and then it was actually our head of sales who took them to buy them a Bavarian attire at Ludwig Beck.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, and
Okay.
they went together and they had obviously a lot of fun, and then they went to Oktoberfest together, which was, back in the day, this was 2019 before the pandemic, obviously, was a huge thing for everybody. So I think everybody.
But Obama didn't join Oktoberfest, right? We heard that.
We don't know that, but we tried at least. Andy Berndt Felix tried as much as they could to get him involved. They we also sent him lederhosen, branded lederhosen with the Bits&Pretzel to his hotel room, and I was asking him on stage about that, right? And he said like, yeah, I tried it on, and I think I probably wear it, in the US, but he wasn't wearing it on stage, because obviously it was not the place for him. He had this statesman situation there.
Sure.
But I mean, like feeling this vibe of these many people in the room, and feel the enthusiasm of these entrepreneurs who were sitting there was outstanding. And it's once in a lifetime situation for a journalist, and also for a human being. I was meeting Barack Obama backstage really shortly before we kicked off our conversation. And he was like very calm, very nice. He knew my name, very professional, obviously very guarded. And I remember that the Bavarian police kind of freaked out, and they were like kind of everywhere, and they caused a lot of distraction. But at the end, I think it was a great opportunity, not only for me personally, but also for the whole team at Bits&Pretzls, and also for.
And I can tell you also for us as audience, it was great. It was really inspirational and great to see. And thanks again for doing that for all of us, for the startup ecosystem, and maybe talking about vision and the power that an event like this can have. I can imagine vision also plays a big role at Marvel Fusion, the company you're currently working with.
This rocket science company.
The rocket science company. So Britta, can you explain maybe in simple? I checked your new website, and I think I understood what you do, but maybe you can.
That's good. I will tell this to our designers.
But maybe you can tell us again a little bit about what is it that you're actually working on, and how bold is the mission, and also at the same time, how realistic. I mean, of course, it will be hard to answer for you here in this context, but how realistic is that we see a new kind of energy in the next 5 years coming from Marvel Fusion?
Right. I think, like, to be very honest, I'm just a communication person, right? I'm not the person who's working on the hardcore science. So these would be our scientists from all over the world, would be our Chief Science Officer, Georg Korn, and our CEO, Moritz von der Linden. So my job is basically to try to explain to the public what Marvel Fusion is actually doing. And it's kind of an interesting endeavor for me so far, because I think everybody is really aware that we are running into a huge energy problem, right? Right now, like we looked at the numbers. Last year Germany was importing 30% of its energy from outside, specifically from France, whereas we know nuclear fission is predominant. So. I think everybody is aware that we have a huge problem and that we won't be able to, supply enough energy moving forward, which I think it's a huge issue specifically for the industry. We talked about, the car makers, chemical industry, and many other industries who need energy. And I think we don't have a sufficient solution right now, because renewables, solar, wind, they are highly weather dependent, and they are not able to supply reliable and limitless energy that we all need. So just to give you a little background on how Moritz and Georg actually kind of created this company in the first place.
When was this, by the way? When did they start?
Oh, it's actually very recent. So the company was started in July 2019.
Oh, okay.
And it was basically in stealth mode until end of last October. So we just started to talk to the public. You know, specifically in fusion, fusion actually is not a new topic. So you know, scientists and really good scientists work on this topic for a long time, and billions of euros and dollars are spent already without having any effect.
Of
whatsoever.
course, I did some research, and I read that like scientists have been working on the topic for nearly 50 years. I think, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and there are like several projects. One of what probably most people know would be ITER, which is a fusion reactor in France, and that's all true. At the same time, we have really big innovations in laser technology, so we are able to provide high intense repetition rate peak power right now in the laser side, and also which you need to actually create a fusion reaction. And on the other hand, you have these nanostructured targets that kind of raise the reaction, the fusion reaction, the possibility of these reactions, and also the energy output. So
okay, so sorry. So just if I get you right, so kind of you need the targets on the one side, and you need the laser on the other side, and you kind of shoot at the targets.
Exactly. Yeah.
And how big is the whole thing? Is it like massive?
Several millimeters.
Millimeters.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's small, and then you shoot on the target, and then that releases a special.
Yeah, exactly.
Energy. Okay.
What you want to do, what the name fusion says, is you want to merge two nuclei to release energy, and in the process, energy is released and then converted very easily through a magnetic field into electricity. And the idea of having fusion power plants, which we are working on, and the time frame, because you asked for it, right? So the time frame is we need several steps to prove our science, and the first step would be to build a test facility within the next 3 to 4 to 5 years. And
I heard you're in discussion with like areas around Munich.
Yeah, we look into different locations in around Munich, but also in other areas of Germany. Actually, when we started communicating in November, December, we got very interesting offers from different places, also around Berlin, and we all know that Tesla is there, also chose this location. So we are still in discussion with many locations to try to figure out what the best place for us would be. But we are pretty confident that we can prove the science within the next 4 to 5 years, and then we
that
know
will be the test plant, and then you can prove it, and then you can.
Yeah, we know if the science works, and you know, one of the main goals in the fusion community is to create more energy than you put in. You know, you want to have energy gain.
Yeah.
And this is, you know, we are confident that we can create and prove that within the next 4 to 5 years. And
super exciting. So
I know this is, you know, it was a tough decision for me to leave Bits&Pretzls because it was a great, you know, place to be. But when Moritz at the time asked me if I wanted to join this rocket ship, there was no question, right? I would definitely do that, and I really like this, you know, being in the driver's seat and really be the player in the game, and really create something and push something forward. In this space. Although you know, honestly, it's an ambitious goal. It's very complicated. Nobody ever did it. We are all pretty aware, but we are ambitious enough, and we have the best scientists. And we are pretty confident that we can do it.
And we were talking earlier about the things that you've seen changing in the last years in the Munich startup ecosystem. And you said, yes, it's technology on the one side and ambition, as we hear from Marvel Fusion, but it's also the capital side. Yeah. So when it comes to capital, like who are the main investors of Marvel Fusion? Is it rather local or more international?
We have international investors. For example, Albert Wenger from Union Square Ventures. He's invested in several. He's actually, the last time I met him, it was in New York. He's really right to at Union Square in the middle of Manhattan. So he's one of our investors, and also Blue Yacht Capital, which is a Berlin-based company. But you know, the investor who is like actually involved with us, Jason Whitmire, he comes from California. He actually grew up in Los Angeles. So we have this, you know, very American investor mindset, and we are at this point actually, you know, trying to extend our reach, trying to grow. So and as a startup, you are always in the process of raising money, specifically because fusion is so hard, and building a power plant, it's a couple of $100 million question, right?
And I'd like to ask you, just because I think it's super relevant for us as a startup ecosystem. Yes, it's great to have international investors on board, but is it at the same time, do you see a certain risk, not only for Marvel, but also for other companies, if you get too much international investment, that at some point there's the question, okay, why would we stay in Germany or Munich at all, or wouldn't we relocate to the US or somewhere else?
Yeah, I think, there are always several factors that you consider as a startup when you think about the best location. So for us, it would be the talent, and we were able to get researchers and laser experts who built huge lasers in California, for example, at the Lawrence Livermore facility, which is 70 miles away from San Francisco. The guy who actually built this laser is actually working for us right now. So we were able to get all these American super scientists to Marvel Fusion and to the location of Munich, because obviously...
So they relocated to Munich from the US. That's great to hear. Okay.
And obviously, Munich is very attractive because of, being close to the Alps, and also nice city, warm city. But, when you ask me about the international investors, I think, German investors and also the industry and also politics should get their shit together, right? Because there are like so many interesting startups here. And if they don't get involved, I mean, to be fair, there are like many great German investors who would, do everything to foster this ecosystem, right? But at the same time, I see also, politics in the driver's seat to do more, to, help these moonshot projects to get out of the university into the real world, because this is where innovation is actually coming from.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. I mean, I think by now we have about 150 active startup, venture capital, and also other investors in the ecosystem, which is good news. It's a great development compared to 8 years ago. But yes, we need more capital here. We need to have it more attractive. We need government support in that regard. I couldn't agree more. Absolutely, that's one thing.
What do you think about this? I mean, being in the industry, in the ecosystem for so long as an entrepreneur, you also worked in different roles, at Kununu, obviously. Now you have another company. So what do you think about the role of, investors and also politics in this game?
Yeah. I mean, the capital side is super important, no doubt about that. But I think there's at least two more things that the government or the ecosystem could do to foster more entrepreneurship. And the first point is, I think you said, hey, get your shit together and trust the startups, and I'm kind of on the same note. Like really trust startups as customers, as solution providers for really important topics. And I think one great example is the current pandemic. I mean, look at the Corona Warn app, the official.
Which is a joke.
I don't know.
Obviously.
Well, I agree, because it's just it's a joke. I think it was ridiculously expensive, and it's just not used. And yes, there's privacy concerns and so on. But I think one major problem is that it has not been developed by a startup who goes really deep. We had the topic of bottom up versus top down early on. I think in this case, bottom up would have really helped. Have somebody who builds a great technology and cuts the crap and does not build a huge organization around something, but just does produces the best solution. So I think the first thing is really trust startups as better solution providers to big problems. So the government could also really include startups in official tender processes and just make it easier for startups to sell their products in where it really counts. And I see that not happening. When it's really important, there's always this reflex to ask the big corporates first, and that definitely has to change.
What do you think should the government do on a strategic side? I mean, obviously people are talking about having a Ministry of Digital or a Minister of Digital. Do you think that would be helpful? Do you think, in terms of funding, there should be, a fund? Obviously, Christian Miele with the German Startup Association, he worked very hard to, change something about the Mitarbeiterbeteiligung. So where do you see all that going? Do you see the road towards change, or where do you see some roadblocks here?
Yeah. let me come back to the picture of top down and bottom up, and I think we need change on both ends. So the top down end would be, yes, a ministry for digital affairs. I think that's a right step because it just gives us the permanent presence of the topic of digitization and transformation on the agenda. It's just there, and that's important, but that's definitely not enough, because if you have a ministry that does not have the power to change something on the bottom up end, then it just can't change anything. So I think, yes, we need a ministry and we need the lighthouses and we need the vision there. On the other hand, we need concrete projects on the ground that change things on an everyday basis. And I mean, there's a couple of ideas, and let me just maybe name one, because I've talked about that earlier. And from my perspective, we could introduce a concept like entrepreneurial leave in Germany. So similarly to parental leave, where people can take off a year or two and have the guarantee to return in their jobs if they like, why not have something like that for entrepreneurs? And why do I think that's a good idea? Because if I talk to people, and not only here at WERK1, but also in my in the circles where I am, one thing I hear very often is, actually, I would like to do, like to start a startup, but I don't have the guts to do it because I have a good job, a well-paid job.
And the idea would be, I'm working at an SAP, for example, and I would say, well, now I'm taking my entrepreneurial leave for 2 years, trying myself in the startup ecosystem, and I come back whenever I want it.
Yeah, that would be the very simple idea. You just have the right to return. And I think because what will be really hard to change is the German culture of we always need like a safety net, and we always want to be sure that we can pay our bills, which is good in a way. And yes, we do talk a lot about cultural change, but that's just one thing, side of the medal. And the other thing is, yeah, okay, then let's work with that feeling that people have, and let's just give them that sense of safety and give them an option to return. And yes, that would be the very simple idea. And I just mentioned that as one example because we were talking about what can we change. Yes, vision on the one hand, and on the other end, we need to do very concrete things that change things in everyday lives.
Yeah. Cool. I would totally agree with you. I think, we need more of his entrepreneurial mindset, specifically when it comes to solving the big issues, right, in science and, for humankind, basically, for the future. So I think we have to try more and experiment more and take more risk because, we really need to change a lot about this world. And to save it for the next generations. I mean, you have 4 kids, right? So, I think everybody should, be more aware of what kind of world he or she is leaving behind. That would be at least my wish for the future.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And Britta, in the end, this is also why we as WERK1 have the mission to be the most startup-friendly place in Munich. Because we think, hey, this is here in our building, in our 5,000 square meters, here in our little micro ecosystem, we can actually change things and we can offer services that help startups and make a difference. And so we are kind of focusing on that small level because we think we can change things here, but we are also super happy to engage in a larger scale discussion on what needs to change on a policy level and so on. But that's really what drives us, and because we are strong believers in that the change that's necessary to shape a better tomorrow will come from entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And
I couldn't agree more. Yeah, maybe because we are sitting here to celebrate the 8th birthday of WERK1. We can probably, I don't know, for last question, we can probably talk about our wishes for the next 8 years. What would be yours?
My wishes for the next 8 years would be that. Most of the people that actually have dreamed about trying something out, be it a startup or just be a little side project or something, that at least 50% of those people actually do it. So this would be really one wish, and that we can collect numbers and really see that there has been change in the next 8 years.
Yeah.
This would be one major wish. And yours, Britta?
I think for me it would be more ambitious entrepreneurs, more deep tech science stuff, rocket science as you call it, and just more great ideas and more thinking about what world we really want to build and how we can actually make this world a better place. And I think that's actually really the task of entrepreneurs in the end.
Okay, so get more entrepreneurs and get more entrepreneurs with rocket science ideas, so actually believe in their vision and actually do it. So yeah, before closing this, I'd actually like to invite all of you. Thanks for spending that little time with us together. But if you like, drop us a comment below this video and share your ideas and your wishes for the next 8 years, not only for WERK1, but also for the startup ecosystem in Munich. Your wishes, your ideas, and your touch points, and we'd be super happy to read that and follow up on that. Yeah, so I think we are already at the end of our little conversation.
Yeah,
Britta,
thanks a lot.
Thank you
for
very
the
much.
invitation. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you very much. Very inspirational and great. And I wish you all the best of luck for Marvel Fusion.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I will come and visit you very soon.
Absolutely.
In your office.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, so again, WERK1, happy birthday, happy 8 years, and looking forward to the next 8 years. And as you heard at the beginning, we have exciting projects coming up with our new building, WERK 1.4, where we will also have not only startup offices and co-working, but also Munich's most startup-friendly co-living concept. And I think this will be great fun. And looking forward to seeing you all very soon again here when it's possible. Okay. Thanks, Britta, again.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Bye.